recording.
Okay. So what do you think the state's response to this particular Supreme Court ruling should be?
When the Supreme Court extended the Second Amendment outside of the House, which it just did, onto the streets so that people can now more readily get concealed weapons, obviously there's going to be a proliferation of guns on the streets. Governor Hogan ultimately would have had to change the law because the Supreme Court spoke rightly or wrongly, and clearly it was wrongly, but he could have put in alternatives, and so he didn't have to say that everybody can now just go get a concealed weapon. There needs to be restrictions on supply and demand. In other words, on who can get a concealed carry permit. For example, people with mental health histories in their background, people with domestic violence histories in their background, people with felonies and criminal records should not be able to have access to a gun. So we need to enhance our red flag laws in that regard. But also, there's something called time, place, and manner. You know it in the First Amendment. You know you can't run into a movie theater and yell fire. You can't use bad words on network television in the middle of the day. And so we need to have that with guns as well. So we should do what more mirrors the New York law, which is say you cannot carry a concealed weapon in public spaces, at schools, at polling places, which are open today, on playgrounds like the one behind us, and in a lot of different spaces where, for example, alcohol is being served, that you cannot carry a concealed weapon there. There are other ways in which we can mitigate the likelihood of a gun being misused. For example, licensing, more training, and then ultimately we need to make sure that we not only prohibit assault weapons in Maryland, but prohibit them from coming into Maryland through loopholes and other trafficking.
So if the state does nothing, would a person be allowed to carry a weapon into a business? Let's say there's no sign on the door. You could carry into a private restaurant or what have you.
And if the way it is right now here in Maryland, given what the governor said, somebody can have a concealed weapon anywhere. So that's why these restrictions need to be in place. Now, some states are going to go further and say you cannot carry a concealed weapon into, say, a business or a private home unless it specifically says that you can. And so but for right now, the problem is Governor Hogan jumped the gun on outlawing the law that we have now. The legislature needs to pass a law, or a lawsuit needs to happen. So he proactively did that, but he didn't put anything in its place. And we need to have safeguards in its place because no one wants to have guns in schools and in libraries, on the metro, on the bus, on playgrounds, and polling places, or where alcohol is being served. So those are sort of easy to do. For whatever reason, he decided not to do that. We need to have a groundswell of support to make sure that we have limitations. We can't change what the Supreme Court did for 230-something years. The Second Amendment was a collective right. Why was it a collective right? Because it says right there in the Constitution, it's for a militia. In the Heller case, the Supreme Court changed that and made it an individual right, but it limited that individual Second Amendment right to a handgun to be used in the home for self-defense. What the Supreme Court did here was takes that out of the house and puts it all over the streets, and you're going to have a proliferation of guns.
Do you think this